Hi, J.C. Melvin here, broker and member of the association for almost 43 years right now, and on the faculty, and have been honed in and focused on the NAR settlement and the new forms. First of all, I've got to say a shout out to the Forms Committee for doing a fantastic job. Looking forward to working and having a conversation with Julie. Julie, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Julie Youngblood, born and raised in Las Vegas, also been in the business not as long as JC, but it feels like it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here because I've been fortunate enough to get to speak with top agents and teams and professionals just like you all across the country. And so really getting a feel and a flavor for how we're really adjusting to the settlement.
Right. And one of the reasons we thought we would get together is just yesterday, one of our agents got an offer on the old form. Yeah. So, we reached out to the agent and said, hey, you've got an offer on the old form. And they said, why? Is there a new form? In conversation, we also realized they did not have a buyer brokerage agreement, and they actually had no vehicle to get paid. So you're going to see some confusion out there, right? And some people just aren't prepared for what's happening because they're just not paying attention. Julie and I did the class at the Durango Hotel at the general membership meeting last week. We had about 300 there, and there's still a lot of people out there that just don't have a handle on it. So this is for them. And I would say to those of you that have an understanding, let's play nice in the sandbox with the other agents that come on board and do a transaction occasionally and just don't know what they're doing yet, right?
So what JC and I are going to do is sort of like a Cliff Notes version of all of the trainings that have happened over the last few weeks.
Right.
And what we hope is that you'll join us at a future training where you can get some more in-depth knowledge and experience. And the truth is, the further down this path we go, the more dialed in the information will become, the more succinct the message will become as well.
And it'll just become commonplace. Everybody's going to be comfortable with it.
Right. So we're going to dive in to the new forms. Again, we always recommend that as you go through this process, you speak to your broker.
Of course.
And I think it's also fair to note that the settlement has given guidelines for realtors across the country, and our association has taken some additional steps to protect the membership. And so when you are interacting, remember that it's not that these are the laws, this is the agreement we made in the settlement, and our association, again, has made some additional steps, and your broker may also take some additional steps.
Right. Perfect. And Julie, one of the things you just mentioned, I'll just remind everybody, I've heard a lot of agents say, well, I'm explaining to the customer and the client that it's the new law. Stop saying that, because it's not a law. It's an agreement. It's a federal court approved an agreement. So don't use the word law. The first form we're going to look at is the new BBRA. We used to call it the Buyer's Brokerage Agreement, and now
Buyer Brokerage Representation Agreement.
We know it means the same thing, so we won't get hung up with that. But as we go to page 1 of the top of it, you can see clearly here that it's saying, hey, first of all, identify the type of property that you're going to be showing. Julie, if you were showing residential property, which of these boxes would you check?
I would probably obviously check residential. I might check investment if I know they're looking for an investment property, and absolutely new home, because that can always pop up.
So you would check all 3 of those if you were working with a regular buyer that was going to buy a residential property?
I would,
right.
Absolutely.
And then it asks for some basic information there. Hey, what's the general theme of what they're looking for? 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, what have you? What area of town? And then I would probably always suggest that you put either all the cities or Clark County, Nevada, or other acceptable property in Clark County, Nevada there.
We've all had this happen, JC, where we thought a buyer, they told us they wanted to live in one area, they only wanted this many bedrooms, and before you knew it, you were on the opposite side of town looking at something completely different.
Right.
And so what you don't want to do is sort of hog-tie yourself to this very detailed property description, when the truth is we know that motivation changes, and as they have experience in the market, they being our buyers, they may also morph and change what they're looking for.
Sure. So just not belabor this area of it, but if I had met with a couple and they were interested in Summerlin, they said to me, all I want, Julie, is Summerlin. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about that, and I described the house a little bit, and I said, in Summerlin. And then as time went by, a week or 2 later, they decide to buy a house in Green Valley South. Now they look at the paperwork and they think, oh, this is only my agent for Summerlin. Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to go ahead and use somebody else over here in Green Valley. So that's why we're saying, make sure you're general and you cover yourself there, right?
Right. I think it's also an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you work the whole valley.
Right.
Which I have had that experience before.
Okay.
So good. I'm actually kind of excited about this.
Okay, good. Let's go to the next slide for a second. which is the slide where it says or, and then you can check a separate address. Talk to us about when would you use this, Julie?
So this is for if you have a buyer client who only wants to be represented on specific properties.
Okay.
We used an example in the class of maybe you have a couple of these when you're doing an open house, because we know per the settlement, you don't have to have everybody that walks through the door sign a buyer brokerage agreement. However, the moment that you are going to start touring other properties, you do need an agreement signed. So as we're doing our open houses, I know we're preparing and we know other properties available that are alike and in the same area. So I might say, if you don't love this one, I've got another one right across the street I can show you after the open house. I just need you to sign this agreement that says I'm okay to show that to you. And then if you love it, I'll represent you and I'll be compensated.
Perfect. Okay, good. Let's go to the last slide on the broker agreement, which is the buyer broker fee. And so this is the area where item number 3.
This is the area where a lot of us get heartache.
This is where the heartache comes in.
This is where it starts.
This is where we've got to become more professional and be able to present our value to the customer and the client. We recognize this is that area. This is the area that the agent has got to check and put the amount of fee that they're going to be charging the buyer. And the thing that's important to recognize and remember here is the agent, you cannot accept any more in this transaction than you have agreed to on this form, right?
Right. So a question we're getting a lot, not to get into it too much,
right,
is, well, what if the builder is offering more? Or what if the builder is offering a bonus? The crux of our agreement is that we have established what we're worth. Mm-hmm. The consumer has agreed to pay that. And if somebody else thinks that you're worth a bonus or worth more, that's not part of the deal.
That's not part of the deal. No, I agreed to work with you for this much money.
That's right.
So this is more of a disclosure document. I see a lot of people making a big deal out of this. Mm-hmm. I say don't do that. It's a disclosure document. It's good for us. It's good for the industry in the long term.
It's really important that you read this stuff before you're filling it in for the first time. Highlight it, write all over it, meet with your broker, ask your questions, because it is a new form and you're going to want to make sure that you're confident having the conversation with your clients.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you get to check all that apply in this compensation section. So if you're charging a percentage, you're going to check that box and you're going to put your percentage in there.
Right.
If you're charging a flat fee, you're going to put that in there.
You could put that in there.
If you're charging an additional commission, maybe you're doing a percentage plus an additional commission, you would check 2 boxes and you would fill that in.
And that would be okay to do.
So let's move on to the listing agreement.
Let's go to the listing agreement. This is item number 5 on the listing agreement, which is the compensation. And Julie, what's totally different about this than what we have been used to for the last 100 years?
The biggest difference here is that it specifically outlines that this is the compensation that will be paid to the listing brokerage.
Period.
Right.
And there's no share. It actually goes on to say that there's no splitting or otherwise sharing this with another broker. So the association contract is very clear. This is all about the seller. If a company wanted to collect a different fee and offer compensation, they would do that on an addendum.
Right, a company-created addendum.
A company-created addendum. And the association isn't going to do that for legal reasons. So the association is not going to be involved in that. However, I just want everybody to know it's legal if their company wants to do that.
Right. Per the settlement, you can do broker-to-broker compensation.
Right.
Our association has made the decision to not make that part of the contract as a protective layer for us.
Right. Perfect.
All right.
And I think they've done an outstanding job here. So let's go to the last one, which is the residential purchase agreement. And what we're going to do is go to page 2 of the purchase agreement. So before we look at the form, let me just say I've met with my buyer. I've signed a buyer's brokerage representation agreement.
Okay.
I have agreed on the fee that I'm going to be paid. Mm-hmm. And inside of that brokerage agreement, it also gives me the authority, the buyer client has given me the authority to attempt to negotiate that fee inside the purchase agreement.
Correct.
Okay. And so now, Julie, explain what we've got here. This is the top of page 2 currently, item number 2.
So this is our opportunity and the buyer's opportunity to offset some of those fees, some of that compensation. You're simply going to write in here whatever you would like. It could be your full compensation. If the buyer is willing to pay some of it, maybe it's going to depend on that property, right?
Right.
Are there multiple offers? Is it priced well? It's going to be a property by property basis, but this is where you're going to look to negotiate and offset the compensation that your buyer client has agreed to pay you to represent them.
And then it's going to be negotiated. So it's back and forth until you come to terms with an agreement. If somebody counters this, the seller counters that a little bit, then you explain to your buyer and you do a new cost sheet for your buyer showing that, hey, look, half my fee was being paid by the seller. They agreed to pay half. The other half will be on you, Mr. Buyer. I've prepared a new cost sheet so that you can see the cash outlay that you're going to be required to make in order to close this transaction. So that's a pretty quick Cliff Notes rundown. One of the things that we want to remind, depending on when you're seeing this, we have a program that Julie and I will be doing here on the 16th, so the day before this goes live, from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. It's on the education calendar. It's a 3-hour class, includes credits. So if you're unclear at all, or you're a broker or a manager and not clear with what's happening, come to this class. We will take time and go through the forms and kind of define everything.
That's right. Yeah. The last class was awesome, very interactive. And if you went to the last one and you just loved what you saw, come back by. I think this is the kind of material that you could hear over and over and over again. And every time you do, you learn something new.
Sure. So thanks for spending a few minutes with us. We sincerely appreciate it and hope you got something out of this.